Boyfriend who dreams of having kids will be heartbroken when I end things to live a child-free life. I'm someone who's never really felt a deep desire to have children. I've always been described as childish and young for my age, someone who likes being looked after, who reached milestones a bit later, like moving out or finishing school. I only just completed med school and started my first real job at 25, and while that wasn't my fault, it adds to that feeling that I still have so much growing up to do. My partner and I have been together for a year and a half. He's always known he wants kids, at least 2, he says, as a minimum. Before we got together, I'd been adamantly child-free for at least a year. When we started dating and realized this huge difference, I thought it would be the end, but there was so much between us that we decided to see if my feelings would change once I started working. I dove into countless opinions and articles, read the baby decision, and thought deeply about what it would mean to have a child. Maybe, I thought, one child could be manageable. Maybe one and done would be my compromise. We kept the conversation open and honest the entire time. I started coming up with all these conditions, as if I could engineer a scenario where I might be willing to have kids. My mental health would have to be stable, I'd need to be happy in my job, which is tough with all the career uncertainty I'm facing, guaranteed date nights every week, family support to take the kids for a weekend every month so I could get a real break, enough money to hire a nanny, a partner who'd share at least half of the responsibilities, maybe even more. The list grew and grew, full of things that couldn't really be guaranteed. What if the child had special needs? What if they were highly extroverted and felt neglected when I didn't want to engage with them all the time? If I'm being honest, I was just negotiating with myself, trying to avoid the reality that, deep inside, I was in a relationship that would likely have to end. Maybe I'll change my mind one day, but I know it won't happen soon enough for it to matter for my current partner. I don't regret staying with him at all, he's taught me so much. We've shared so many wonderful times and important lessons that I wouldn't have wanted to miss for anything. But the truth is, eventually, we'll have to go our separate ways. I love him too much not to want him to have the future he truly deserves, a family, with someone who wants it as much as he does. He shouldn't have to settle for a partner who has to convince herself she could deal with kids if the conditions are perfect. I know in my bones that I'm not interested in the daily grind of parenting. It's tragic, because I am incredibly happy in this relationship. He's everything I could dream of in a partner, accepting, non-judgmental, thoughtful, empathetic, and caring. We share the same sense of humor and always manage to have a great time together. He grounds me and nudges me into action, while I help him open up emotionally and share deeper, thought-provoking insights. Our values align so closely, authenticity and empathy are cornerstones for both of us. Without this issue hanging over us, I'd be over the moon to spend my life with him. He'd make an amazing father. He's all in, flexible enough to be the stay-at-home parent if that's what we wanted, or just as happy with both of us working. He truly loves cooking for me, caring for me, and making sure I feel supported. I see how he lights up when he teaches kids every week as a passion project, or when he supervises international kids camps. As someone who had poor emotional parenting myself, I've grown so much with his validation and encouragement. Sometimes I wonder if I was drawn to him because of his nurturing nature. The same qualities I adore in him are the ones that would make him a remarkable father. I'm terrified I won't ever find someone like him again. It's an odd fear. I sometimes worry that anyone as selflessly caring as him will also want kids. I'm not suggesting child-free people are heartless. After all, I'm probably one of them. But sometimes I wonder if those like me are a little more self-focused. He just naturally cares for others, never complaining about the sacrifices he makes, whether it's for me or anyone else. Still, I want a relationship where we care for each other, not where I'm expected to care for a child who can't give back, or at least not for a long time, and never with certainty. The only reasons I'd ever want a kid are having someone there when I'm older, or if something happened to my partner. Occasionally, I imagine giving a child a better childhood than I had, but honestly, that's more poetic than a true motivation for me. Parenting would be a huge struggle for me for so many reasons. I'm profoundly empathetic and have strong values, but when it comes to physical tasks like household chores or cooking, I'm extremely selfish. I can't even lie in games like Among Us. I always tell my partner how much I adore him, and I'm highly sensitive to others' feelings. I'll happily listen to someone's worries. But I would never stay late at work to help with extra tasks, nor would I want to help someone move house or manage other menial jobs. I bulk cook just to avoid thinking about food for a few days. That's the kind of physical drudgery that most parenting actually entails, not the soulful talks or emotional support I thrive at. The daily monotony and unpredictability, driving kids around, getting them up in the mornings, preparing real food instead of eating the same leftovers, for days, would wear me down. I get easily stressed by long hours and constant demands, even at work when it's just paperwork or petty complaints. I like things convenient and organized, and kids are the opposite of predictable. When I feel overwhelmed and busy, I can't sleep or relax, even in my downtime. I know life with kids would be like a never-ending to-do list, and I'd probably be miserable, no matter how many breaks I got. I need 8 to 9 hours of sleep, and that's laughable with young children. I have a lot of personal trauma, including neglect from my own childhood. My feelings are strong, sometimes overwhelmingly negative. I need to be looked after, understood, shown empathy, by adults who can reciprocate and be grateful, not by children who will, by their own nature, be completely self-centered for years. I'd be so triggered by that, not because the kids would be bad, but just because they're learning about the world and can't support me emotionally. I'm extremely physically sensitive to both pain and pleasure. The thought of the physical pain of pregnancy and childbirth terrifies me. I've lived through an accidental pregnancy and subsequent termination. The nausea was so intense, those few months remain the worst of my life. I know I could regret not having kids. But as I am now, with my mental health and personality, I'd lose far more by becoming a parent than by remaining childfree. I'd endure years of stress and pain for an uncertain reward. While biology seems good at making people not regret having kids after the fact, that doesn't sway me when I have a choice in the first place. So I know what I have to do. Sooner or later, for both our sakes, I have to let him go, no matter how much it breaks my heart. Update 1. The breakup was brutally hard. Of course it was. Even though we were together for only about a year and a half, that was more than enough time for someone to become deeply woven into my life. That last weekend together, we sat in the car for hours, crying, exchanging cards and gifts, clinging to every moment before letting go. For weeks, I cried. For months, I felt hollow, as if a piece of me had gone missing. To this day, I sometimes miss being in a relationship. But now, things are so much better. I can honestly say I've mostly moved on, at least mentally. I don't think about him every day anymore, and even when I do, it doesn't sting like it used to. We ended things wanting to stay in touch, not as close friends, but as people rooting for each other, hoping the other finds happiness. I think I can genuinely be happy just knowing that he's out there living the life he wants. Sometimes, I debate reaching out to him once I'm further along in my healing, but so far we've kept a strict no contact. That's been absolutely the right call. Through all this, I see with complete clarity, I made the right choice. I can imagine all the awful scenarios that would have unfolded if we had stayed together, and even when I try to construct the happiest possible outcome, it still doesn't feel right. That future just doesn't fit me. Looking back, it's strange that I ever questioned any of this, but I suppose that's what love does, mixed with a heavy dose of social conditioning. Not long after everything happened, I moved into a new flat, and my flatmates, who are between 3 and 7 years older than me, share the same views on kids and society that I do. There's something comforting about being understood, realizing there are people out there living happily, their own way. Having older people around as examples, though I'm sure they'd laugh at the idea of being anyone's role model, frozen pizza for dinner all the time, makes me feel less alone. I'm definitely not ready to get serious with anyone for a while, but I've had a few sweet moments, a few compliments here and there, and that gives me hope for what's ahead. My friends have been incredible, and I'm so grateful I never let my relationship get in the way of those bonds. I see now how easily people can fall into that trap. Now my future feels almost wide open, full of possibilities without the pressure or expectation of kids, and it's like a weight has been lifted. Sure, I'll probably have moments when I second guess whether I made the right call, but I think everyone does that, no matter what. Overall, I'm always reminded why this was the right choice for me. Just the other day, I was on a plane, sitting in front of a family with young kids. For the whole hour, it was just endless, Mayum, why is 30, at first cute, but it wore on me quickly and by the end I was nearly at my limit. It was a real reminder, I'd lose myself if I had to handle that 24/7, let alone for just a few hours. So, in summary, things are getting better. Making that hard decision was the right call, and listening to my gut led me forward. Reflecting on who I really am, what actually makes me content, was key. The little things, like sleep, quiet, free time, avoiding constant mental burden and chores, those made all the difference between happy times and depressive ones. Being a junior doctor helped clarify this even further. Everyone always says helping people makes it worth the long hours, but for me, it never outweighed the exhaustion and disconnect I felt. It turns out, being honest about what truly brings satisfaction is crucial, even if it seems selfish at first. But really, taking care of your mental health and nurturing the relationships you already have is anything but selfish. Update 2. I chose the child-free side of life nearly 3 years ago, after breaking up with a partner I deeply loved. She wanted kids, but it just didn't feel right for me, no matter how much I cared for her. Since then, I've been living my life surrounded by friends and family, and that part hasn't changed a bit. Work, on the other hand, became incredibly stressful, so stressful, in fact, that I made the decision to go part-time. That's been such a relief. I now have a lot more time for my hobbies and to truly relax. I know if I had children, going part-time would just mean more time taken up with parenting duties, exactly what I see happening to most of my colleagues. Over these past few years, I've come to realize a lot about myself and the struggles I still have to work through. I decided to start therapy, which has honestly been more therapeutic than I could have anticipated. That process has only convinced me further that I made the right decision. Having kids simply isn't what I want out of life, and that's become even clearer. There's so much self-care and healing I need to do for myself first. Working in mental health, especially with children, I've seen firsthand how parents who have children for the wrong reasons can unintentionally create struggles for their kids. I've worked with more than a handful of patients who tried to save their relationship by having children, and inevitably that creates an even bigger mess. Parents in constant conflict, a poor family environment for the child, breakups despite the kids, or both. If you decide to be a parent, you owe it to your child to work through your issues first, because if you don't, it all gets passed on. Too many people never stop to consider this, but I see it every day. Another big shift in my life is my relationship status. After giving myself time to grieve my last relationship in a healthy way, I met someone amazing. We've been together almost 2 years now. He's genuinely wonderful and has some positive traits I only dreamed about with my ex, but never really expected to find. I'm a thoughtful person, someone who enjoys deep analysis, and this new partner of mine connects with me on a completely different level. On our very first date, I brought up the kids' conversation right at the end. He later told me he was ecstatic because it meant I was serious and he took it as a clear sign that I was treating him as a real possibility. He was more of a fence sitter about kids, hadn't given it much thought, just kind of assumed he might become a dad after 40, if it happened at all, but never considered not having kids as an option. It was scary for me, going into a relationship where he wasn't all that certain, but over time, it's become obvious he isn't keen on the idea either. I used to worry about whether I'd ever find a partner, considering so many men want children. But I'm beginning to see that the child-free choice is becoming more common these days. Maybe I got lucky, which I certainly did, but I don't think I would have ended up lonely even without him. My life with friends and family would still have been bright, definitely brighter than the alternative of having kids I never really wanted. Rereading what I wrote back when I was wrestling with this decision feels wild. It's obvious I didn't want kids, and yet leaving was so incredibly hard. Getting that affirmation and validation that staying firm was the right decision really helped me envision a happy future for myself. I now see it clearly. I tend to know what I like and what I don't on a gut level. Things only go wrong when I try to override my instincts for the sake of logic, like choosing the job with better pay and hours but way more stress instead of trusting my vague sense about what I'd enjoy more. My gut was right, peace is absolutely priceless, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Update 3. It's been almost 6 months since my last update, and honestly, I wasn't sure I'd ever write another one. Life felt settled, predictable even. My partner and I had our routines, our quiet evenings, our child-free future mapped out. I thought the hardest part was behind me, that breakup years ago, the soul-searching, finding someone who actually understood my choice. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. 3 months ago, I got a message on social media. It was from my ex, the one I broke up with because he wanted kids. My heart literally stopped when I saw his name pop up. We'd maintained strict no contact for over 3 years, and suddenly there he was, asking if we could talk. I stared at that message for hours before responding. Part of me wanted to delete it and pretend it never happened. But curiosity got the better of me, and honestly, I thought I was strong enough to handle whatever he had to say. We arranged to meet for coffee on a Saturday afternoon. I was nervous in a way I hadn't been in years, that familiar flutter in my stomach, the same one I used to get when we were together. When I saw him walk into the cafe, it was like being hit by a truck. He looked exactly the same, maybe a little more tired around the eyes, but still him. Still the person I'd loved so deeply that leaving nearly destroyed me. The conversation started safe enough. We caught up on work, family, the usual surface level stuff, but then he got quiet, and I could see something shifting in his expression. "I need to tell you something," he said, wrapping his hands around his coffee cup. "I've been thinking about you. A lot. More than I should, probably." My chest tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I think I made a mistake." "We made a mistake." I felt the world tilt slightly. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "I haven't had kids. I'm 30 now, and I keep thinking I should want them more than I do. I've been in 2 relationships since us, both with women who wanted families, and I couldn't connect with that future the way I thought I would. Every time I tried to imagine it, I kept thinking about our life together instead." I sat there, speechless. This was not what I'd expected. "I'm not saying I don't want kids anymore," he continued quickly. "I'm just saying maybe I wanted the idea of them more than the reality. Maybe I was so focused on what I thought I was supposed to want that I ignored what I actually had." The walk home was a blur. I felt like I was floating, disconnected from my body. When I got back to my flat, my current partner was cooking dinner, humming to himself, completely oblivious to the bomb that had just gone off in my head. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My partner was sleeping peacefully beside me, and I felt like the worst person alive. Here was this wonderful man who'd embraced the child-free life with me, who'd never pressured me about kids, who made me laugh every day. And I was lying there thinking about someone else. Over the next few weeks, my ex and I started texting. Nothing inappropriate, just talking. About work, about books, about random thoughts. But it felt charged in a way that made my skin prickle. I told myself it was just closure, that we were finally getting the friendship we'd always said we wanted. But I was lying to myself, and I think I knew it. The breaking point came last month. My current partner had to go out of town for a work conference, and somehow my ex and I ended up meeting for dinner. It was supposed to be innocent, just 2 old friends catching up. But the moment I saw him, I knew I was in trouble. We went to our old favorite restaurant, the one we used to go to for special occasions. Sitting across from him, listening to him talk about his work with kids, he's still doing that, still lighting up when he mentions it. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. That pull, that magnetic connection that had made leaving him so devastating. I've been thinking, he said as we walked to our cars afterward. About what you said all those years ago. About how you'd need perfect conditions to even consider having kids. I stopped walking. What about it? What if we didn't have to figure it out right away? What if we could just be together again, and see what happens? I knew I should have said no. I knew I should have walked away, driven home to my partner, and never looked back. But instead, I heard myself saying, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting maybe we were both too young to know what we really wanted. Maybe we gave up too easily. We didn't do anything that night, but we hugged goodbye, and it lasted way too long. Long enough that I knew I was already crossing a line. I've been carrying this secret for weeks now, and it's eating me alive. My current partner keeps asking if I'm okay, if something's wrong, and I keep lying and saying I'm fine. But I'm not fine. I'm the furthest thing from fine. Because the truth is, seeing my ex again has made me question everything. Not about kids, I still don't want them, and I don't think that will ever change, but about us. About whether we really tried hard enough to make it work, or if we just took the easy way out. My current partner is incredible. He's stable, supportive, everything I thought I wanted. But he's also safe. Predictable. With my ex, there was always this electric undercurrent, this sense that anything could happen. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I know I'm at a crossroads. I know I need to make a decision before this gets any worse, but I'm paralyzed by the possibility of making the wrong choice again. What if I leave my current partner and my ex changes his mind about kids? What if I stay and spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been? I keep thinking about what I wrote in my last update about trusting my gut, about how things only go wrong when I override my instincts. But right now, my gut is screaming two different things at once, and I don't know which voice to listen to. All I know is that I can't keep living like this, keeping secrets, lying to someone who deserves so much better. Something has to give, and soon. I just pray I have the courage to make the right choice, whatever that turns out to be. Update 4. I never thought I'd be writing another update, especially not one like this. But here I am, 3 months later, and everything has completely fallen apart. The decision was made for me, in the most brutal way possible. 2 weeks after my last update, my current partner found the text messages. I'd been careless, leaving my phone on the kitchen counter while I showered. When I came out, he was sitting at the table, my phone in his hands, his face completely white. Who is James? He asked quietly. My stomach dropped. James, my ex's real name, though I'd never used it in my posts. I'd saved his contact under his first name only, thinking it would be less obvious. How wrong I was. I can explain, I started, but he held up his hand. I've read enough. His voice was eerily calm. 3 months of messages. 3 months of lying to my face. The next hour was devastating. He read some of the messages aloud, not the worst ones, but enough to make it clear that I'd been having an emotional affair. The late-night conversations, the inside jokes, the I miss you messages that had started appearing more frequently, seeing our private moments exposed like that, hearing the hurt in his voice, made me realize how far I'd fallen. The worst part, he said, tears in his eyes, is that I would have understood if you'd just been honest with me. If you'd told me you were having doubts, if you'd said you needed space to figure things out. But you chose to lie instead. He packed a bag that night and went to stay with his brother. I barely slept, alternating between guilt and panic. When I called my ex the next morning to tell him what happened, his response shocked me. Maybe this is a sign, he said. Maybe we're supposed to be together. Someone's life just got destroyed because of this, I snapped. Because of us. I know, and I feel terrible about it. But we can't keep pretending there's nothing between us. That's when he suggested we meet to talk properly. Not coffee, not dinner, he wanted me to come to his flat. Every rational part of my brain screamed that it was a terrible idea, but I was emotionally raw and desperate for someone to tell me everything would be okay. I went. We talked for hours, dissecting our old relationship, analyzing what went wrong, wondering if we could make it work this time. The conversation was intense, emotional, and I felt more connected to him than I had to anyone in months. When he kissed me, I didn't pull away. I stayed the night. The next morning, I woke up with crushing guilt. I'd cheated on my partner, properly cheated, and the worst part was that it didn't even feel like a mistake in the moment. It felt like coming home. When I got back to my flat, my partner was there, packing the rest of his things. I know where you were, he said without looking at me. You don't need to explain. Please, can we just talk about this? There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. He left his key on the kitchen counter and walked out of my life. 2 years together, ended just like that. I threw myself into the possibility of a future with my ex. We spent almost every day together for the next month, falling back into our old patterns like no time had passed. The chemistry was undeniable, the emotional connection even stronger than before. I started to believe that maybe this was meant to happen, that we'd both needed to grow separately before we could work together, but then reality started creeping in. It began with small things. Comments about his friends' kids, how cute they were, how nice it would be to have little ones running around. I'd brush it off, reminding myself that he'd said he wasn't sure about kids anymore. But the comments kept coming. Then, last month, his sister announced she was pregnant. Watching him at the family dinner, seeing how excited he was, how naturally he talked about being an uncle, about teaching the baby to walk and helping with homework, it hit me like a physical blow. He wanted kids. He'd always wanted kids. Nothing had really changed. That night, I confronted him about it. I never said I didn't want kids, he said defensively. I said I wasn't sure if I wanted them as much as I thought I did. That's not the same thing. Look, I don't know what I want right now. But I know I want you. Can't that be enough for now? For now were the key words, because I could see it in his eyes, the same look he used to get when we talked about our future. He was hoping I'd change my mind. Again. 2 weeks ago, everything came to a head. We were at a friend's barbecue, and there were kids everywhere. I watched him playing with a 3-year-old, making her laugh, being the perfect potential father figure. Other people were watching too, making comments about how good he was with kids, how he'd make a great dad someday. You two would have such beautiful children, one of his friends said to us later. The look on his face when she said it, pure longing, told me everything I needed to know. That night, I ended it. Again. I can't do this, I told him. I can't be the person who keeps you from having the family you want. You don't know what I want. Yes, I do. I saw your face today. I've been seeing it for weeks. The fight that followed was brutal. He accused me of sabotaging us, of being too scared to take a risk. I accused him of trying to manipulate me into changing my mind. We said things we couldn't take back. The last thing he said to me was, "You're going to regret this. You're going to end up alone, and you'll realize you threw away the best thing that ever happened to you." Maybe he's right. Maybe I will regret it. But I know I'd regret having children I didn't want even more. So here I am, single again, having blown up 2 relationships in the span of 3 months. My ex-partner, the one I cheated on, won't speak to me, which I completely understand. My ex is telling mutual friends that I'm unstable, that I don't know what I want, that I'm incapable of commitment. Maybe he's right about some of that too. But for the first time in months, I can sleep at night. I'm not lying to anyone, not keeping secrets, not pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm just me, flawed, complicated, definitely not parent material, and I'm learning to be okay with that. I've started therapy again. My therapist says I have a pattern of getting into relationships that require me to compromise fundamental parts of myself, then resenting the compromise. She might be onto something. I don't know what comes next. Maybe I'll find someone who genuinely doesn't want kids. Maybe I'll stay single and focus on my career, my friends, my own healing. Maybe I'll have a completely different revelation in 5 years and everything will change again. But right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to be honest, with potential partners, with myself, with the messy reality of what I actually want from life. It's harder than it sounds, but it's better than the alternative.